Story 1. The most common answer in this thread seems to be that getting sober and exercising are the solutions to my problems. Story 2. Quit smoking, start walking. I quit using the internet for 4 years and found stability in my life. Life is good now, and I hope to keep it that way. Story 3. I obtained a line of credit and transferred all my credit card debt to it. For the next 5 years, I made regular payments on the line of credit and never spent more on the credit cards than I could pay off in a month. This completely changed my spending habits. Before this, if something cost $500, I would think, I have a $25,000 limit on my card. $500 is nothing. After obtaining the line of credit, I would consider, do I have an extra $500 this month to pay off this expense? It seems simple in hindsight, but it was the single biggest factor that helped me escape never-ending debt. Story 4. I experienced a significant existential crisis at 30, immediately after marrying a domestic abuser in an extravagant ceremony attended by friends and family. I had been dealing with severe post-traumatic stress disorder since high school after growing up with a sexually abusive father. My romantic relationships had been a series of encounters with men who were all abusive in different ways. It all came to a head on the last day of our honeymoon when he was throwing a silent treatment tantrum because I didn't want to go on an all-day bike tour. Throughout the trip, he berated me, called me names, and stared at other women. That moment shattered everything for me. I will always regard it as the dividing line in my life. Something deep inside me cracked. I realized then that I could no longer continue playing that game and that my world was about to be uprooted. The line from Tracy Chapman's song, Fast Car, "You've got to make a decision. Leave tonight or live and die this way," resonates strongly. I cannot count how many times I listened to that song on repeat while crying during that difficult period. My ex-husband and I were somewhat financially secure, but he managed our joint finances. He was vindictive, and I worried he would cut me off financially if I tried to leave. I worked full-time, but all my paychecks went into the joint account, and I had only about $300 to my name when I started planning my exit. I began withdrawing small amounts from the bank, lying about the purpose of the money, and depositing it into a personal account. I was fortunate to have a supportive therapist, the only person who knew for about a year that my happy suburban facade was a facade. He helped me accept the reality of my life and understand where my trauma and lack of self-respect had led me. With his guidance, I found the courage to make a change. Once I had saved enough to support myself until my next paycheck, I waited until my husband was out of town, booked a hotel, transferred my direct deposit to my own account, packed a suitcase with essentials, and left. I told him we were through and filed for divorce a few weeks later. Everything changed after that. It was so stressful that my hair began falling out in clumps, but I would do it all again if necessary. I started being honest about my feelings and setting boundaries with people in my life. In the year following my divorce, I lost about half of my friends. Some disapproved of my decision to leave my husband. Others didn't see value in a relationship where I demanded equality. I reconnected with someone I had known since my teenage years, who had always treated me well. We had attempted a relationship in my early 20s, but I ran away because I felt unworthy of him. We eventually got together and are now married. I gradually learned to love and receive love. The process was slow, messy, and imperfect, but it was steady. I started to love myself. Cooking my favorite meals, exercising regularly, meditating, prioritizing sleep, eating fruits and vegetables, keeping my space clean and organized, moving away from materialism, and spending time with positive and respectful friends. I became intentional about how I spent my time and money, and I transformed. It is still a work in progress. Not every day is perfect, and life can still be challenging, but I am happy more often than not. I no longer have thoughts of self-harm or believe I would be better off dead. I am loved and able to love, and my time here feels meaningful. Story 5. I stopped smoking cannabis. My brain went into overdrive somehow. I had been using cannabis since I was 14 and stopped at 34. My brain never reached its full capacity until I quit. It was amazing what I was able to accomplish all of a sudden. I received 2 promotions from an entry-level job and now live very comfortably. Story 6. I had a child, and her mother passed away when she was a baby. I was living in the basement. We couldn't stay where I was. At that point, I had to make some changes, so I asked for a raise and was laughed at. I took a risk on a different job in a completely different field. Fast forward 8 years, and I am making 3 times as much. 2 cars are paid off, and I own a 5-bedroom home. It's important to change things if they aren't working. Story 7, I went to therapy. Don't blame yourself for not going earlier. I simply wasn't ready for it yet, and your 20s are meant to be confusing. Story 8, I quit my low-paying dream job and went to work in a factory. I have a union contract with great benefits. The first 2 years were challenging, but earning a full-time salary was more than worth it. Story 9, in my late 30s, I worked a job I liked, but I experienced constant financial stress. I only had a high school education, and my attempt at college had ended in my mid-20s. I was married with a newborn daughter when the Great Recession hit. A coworker, who had not completed his degree but was very intelligent and highly skilled, was laid off. 6 months later, he was still job hunting. I couldn't leave my family vulnerable. I made some phone calls and spoke with an academic advisor at my university. We developed a plan for me to finish my degree using evening classes where possible or taking partial days off as needed. It took 5 years of 8-credit semesters, but I earned my degree. Once I had it, I could immediately work temporary jobs for double what I had been making in full-time positions. The temporary role hired me permanently, but I was laid off a year later. Within a month, I found another permanent job, which I still hold today. If money were not a factor, I would still be doing my original job. It was fulfilling work, which is important for people. With significantly reduced financial stress, my new role is the better choice. Story 10. I started exercising. Nothing too intense, just a morning workout and some push-ups later in the day. I take a daily walk of about 4 to 5 kilometers for fresh air, mild cardio, and a chance to reflect. Afterward, I began reading for around 30 minutes a day, starting with motivational books like Unfuel*K Yourself. Later, I improved my diet, again, nothing extreme, just 3 meals a day with no fast food on weekdays. I can't say it changed me completely, but I found peace within myself. Story 11. I stopped casually dating unsuitable partners and found someone who genuinely understands me. Having that kind of support has helped me grow and change some behaviors. Story 12. Therapy, sobriety, exercise, and diet. I am still improving my life to this day and am in a much better place than I was at 32. It's never too late to change. Story 13. I cut off negative friends, stopped drinking, sought mental health support, and took a leap of faith into a new profession. Story 14. I got divorced from a woman who consistently undermined my efforts to find joy in life. She disrupted every plan we made together and negatively impacted her own well-being both physically and financially, despite my attempts to help. My life improved significantly once she was no longer part of it. I was in that relationship for 12 years. Story 15. I took my food, weight, and physical health seriously. Once my physical health started to improve, my mental health also improved drastically. I concentrated on sorting my finances, improving my job prospects, learning to drive, clearing debt, and started saving. I am looking to buy my first property this year. This comes from someone who has been to prison, grew up on my own from the age of 15, experienced homelessness, and endured a very difficult relationship with myself and a complicated partner for most of my adult life. As I approach 40, I can confidently say that I finally have everything in order. Story 16. I divorced my abusive husband. My 30s were filled with difficulties and turmoil. My 40s were a time of growth and achievement. My 60s are a period of serenity and fulfillment. Story 17. I stopped trying to be a teacher because I was not good at it and went to graduate school in computer science. I took out a lot of loans, but 2 years later, I was earning twice the salary by doing things I enjoyed. Story 18. One day at a time. Make a positive change and stick with it until it becomes a habit. No one ever gets a complete restart, but each day is new. Story 19. I was in my late 20s. I was often involved with many women who were already in relationships, and I was drinking and smoking excessively. One day, I woke up and realized I was unhappy with my lifestyle. I didn't like being under the influence, I didn't enjoy lacking a meaningful connection with women, and I felt bad about sleeping with other men's partners. I decided to change my life one afternoon when I woke up hungover at someone's house and saw the emotional pain I had caused. I stopped drinking, stopped smoking, and refrained from casual relationships for about a year. Later, I met a girl I fell deeply in love with. We had children together, and now I strive to be the father my kids can believe in, and the man my partner sees potential in. Story 20. I attended community college and obtained a technical certificate that led to a fulfilling career. Life is much better when you enjoy your job and are not constantly worried about finances. Story 21. Cutting all contact with toxic relatives, starting therapy to unlearn unhealthy coping mechanisms, and resuming heavy weight lifting. Story 22. I quit drinking for 2 years. I still don't really drink, but will have a glass of champagne on New Year's or a glass of wine at a nice restaurant. I also deleted all my social media accounts except for Reddit. I quit social media first and was off it for about 2 years before getting sober. That was the first step that made me look at life differently and truly get to know myself. Then I quit my job and traveled solo for 6 months, which forced me to understand that I can absolutely take care of myself and that I love spending time with myself. The last leg of my travel was when I quit drinking, and that was the final big wave that changed everything. I learned to fully love myself, how to process things in a healthy way, and I healed from past trauma. I grew closer to my family and realized what my dream job was, and I pursued it and got it. Since then, I met my soulmate, who is truly the love of my life, and we had a beautiful baby. I've been the happiest I've ever been every single time I wake up. Story 23. I got sober from everything cold turkey. I joined my local volunteer fire department to give myself a purpose. Story 24. I felt hopelessly behind when I was 30. I am going to share several thoughts that might sound overwhelming or self-centered, but this is my reality. I was one of the brightest students in my high school. I graduated early at 16 and jumped straight into college. I earned my Associate of Arts degree and paused my education because I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. I knew I didn't want to spend more money on a bachelor's degree until I could make a firm decision. An associate degree didn't open any doors for me. I continued waiting tables while I considered my options for a Bachelor of Arts. The problem was, I wasn't the kind of person who could endure soul-crushing work that I wasn't enthusiastic about. That left me with a few options: history major, English major, or philosophy major, all of which pretty much pigeonhole you into teaching, and teaching wasn't going to pay me the kind of money I wanted. Traveling the world was very important to me, and I needed to be able to afford that. I felt stuck. I decided I wanted to work for the airlines. This could be a promising career, and it would allow me free and heavily discounted flights. So I applied to many airlines. Only one interviewed me, Southwest Airlines. I excelled in the interview, but ultimately, they passed on me. I asked them what I could do to be a more competitive candidate, and they advised me to gain 3 years of hospitality experience. So I did. I spent 3 years working for a resort. I was offered a promotion to the supervisor position, but I had watched several great front desk agents take the offer only to be fired or quit within months. So I stayed at the entry-level position. I applied again to Southwest Airlines with all the excitement and enthusiasm in the world, and they told me to go elsewhere. I was devastated. In a snap decision, and in the middle of a quarter-life crisis, I joined the police academy. It would pay me decently, and I was certain I could do it. The funny part was that the psychological evaluation administrator tried to talk me out of it. He told me with scores like mine, I could be anything. He said I was wasting my potential. I thanked him for the ego boost and told him I wanted to proceed. He stamped my paperwork, and I was off to the academy. I injured both my knees a couple of months in. I was anticipating my sign-on bonus to pay off all the credit card debt I accumulated buying equipment for the academy. I came up a few days short of qualifying for it. Once again, I was devastated. I quickly signed up with a contract agency to find work, and they found me a position with the government. I performed so well that I completed all the work they assigned to me a month before my contract was set to expire. They wanted to keep me on after my contract expired, but they couldn't secure the funds. Devastated. I needed to act fast, so I decided to become an insurance agent. I passed the state board exam and started working. I excelled at it. I even made it into the top 3 junior salespeople in the nation. I hated the work, but it paid well. I paid off all my credit card debt and saved some money. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Businesses closed their doors. My career was cut short. Devastated. I finally decided to go back to school and earn my bachelor's degree. I chose a major in leadership studies with a minor in organizational communication. I made this decision because I realized that I wanted to try my hand at teaching. Teachers had seen a pay raise since I was younger, and it was going to pay more than any entry-level job I could find. I returned to waiting tables and completed my bachelor's degree in a little less than a year. Currently, teachers are in short supply and high demand everywhere. It looks like it's going to be my wife and my ticket out of this country. I'm about to start substitute teaching in my old school district, earning $170 a day while I obtain my teaching certificate. It will take 6 to 9 months, depending on the program. By the time I'm ready to accept a full-time teaching position, I'll have almost a year of experience under my belt, and I'll be ready to move to New Zealand. They are currently over 1,000 teachers short, and they did not fill their full quota last time they tried this. My wife is about to become a nurse, and together, we will have turned our lives around at ages 33 and 34. I can teach for 25 years and retire at 60. I'm ready to stop floundering. I finally feel like I can catch up and begin a career that I'll enjoy and that will provide a sense of fulfillment. Story 25. I started exercising lightly and cooking at home. Now, fast food honestly makes me feel bad, but small steps have led to a healthier lifestyle. Story 26. Your time is a top priority now. Do not trade it away for money if you do not have to, but think of it in terms of value. You need to create value that is yours and only yours. Therefore, use your time to learn something new. Renew your social relationships, exercise, eat healthy, and balance your emotions. Do not focus on materialism. If you need to buy something, choose the best or most expensive version so it lasts longer. Story 27. Get treatment for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder with Adderall, quit drinking, and start journaling. Slowly construct a positive life. Story 28. I made mistakes in my early 30s but took responsibility for my actions. I learned that only I could save myself, so I decided to take charge of my life. Story 29. I quit smoking cigarettes, stopped drinking, and returned to school. I now make $125,000 plus bonuses, benefits, and stock options from my home. Story 30. Finally, I sought help on my 33rd birthday and was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I have been on Vyvanse for almost 2 years, and my life has only improved since then. Story 31. Divorce, returning to my favorite hobbies, quitting smoking, finding good pen pals online, switching careers, and moving away from the city I disliked. Story 32. As a general approach, I identify what I was avoiding, both internally and externally, and confront it directly. It's hard and scary at first, but it gets easier the more you practice. You begin to trust yourself, and it creates a positive cycle. I acknowledge that I still struggle with executive dysfunction, as that's how my brain operates, but there are no major issues looming outside my sphere of influence. Story 33. I'm going to try to be as concise as possible, because the transformation I've undergone has been incredible. It was really quite simple. Read or, in my case, listen to Atomic Habits and implement it in your life. Surround yourself with people you want to emulate, those who are positive, healthy, kind, and focused on self-improvement. This is especially important for a partner. Exercise almost every day, including walking. Outdoor walks are beneficial for both the mind and body. Eat nutritious food. Aim for simple, healthy foods such as eggs, meat, and vegetables. You can eat almost anything. Just stay away from processed foods. Practice gratitude as much as possible. Limit your phone usage for extended periods. Another important point is to limit or eliminate alcohol. I was shocked at how quickly my anxiety vanished once I stopped drinking. Engage in open and honest conversations with people you admire and try to learn from them. If you think someone has a great approach to life, ask them about it. If they're exceptional at their job, try to emulate their methods. Lastly, be open and honest with yourself. Most of the time, we know what's holding us back or keeping us in a rut. We recognize what is toxic and what helps us grow. Fill your life and mind with what you believe will move you in the right direction, and before you know it, you might achieve your dream life just as I have. Story 34. I never really made a plan. I went to college for something I enjoyed, but I had no real plan for how to make money after getting a degree. I had undiagnosed obsessive-compulsive disorder and anxiety, and after college, everything came crashing down on me. I was very fortunate to have an amazing wife during this time. That's the one thing I always considered myself lucky about. However, no matter how great my relationship with her was, I always felt that I wasn't doing enough, as if I was incapable of holding up my end of the relationship. My wife never made me feel this way. It was all just me. So I went to therapy for my obsessive-compulsive disorder and anxiety. That helped, but I still had no idea how to progress in the world. I was no longer frozen in fear, but since I had been standing still for so long, I had no idea how to move forward. So I went back to therapy, primarily focusing on career counseling. I met a great counselor, and after 6 sessions, we had a game plan. I have always appreciated what therapy did for me, and I was good at helping my friends. My counselor suggested that I might actually be suited for a career in which I helped people. I ended up looking for a graduate school nearby, and my counselor and I talked through my concerns and questions. He literally printed out the application, and we walked through it together during an entire session. I now work with children dealing with trauma. It's hard sometimes, but I feel like I'm moving forward in my life, actively participating rather than just being dragged along. My wife and I are still very happy. We have a cute child, a dog, and a mischievous cat. We have a house, though no picket fence just yet. But I finally feel like my life has improved significantly. Story 35. I married a woman who loves me, wants the best for me, and always supports me. A good partner is a significant advantage. Story 36. I spoke to a debt consolidation service to help me begin overcoming the significant debt burden I created in my 20s. My credit score had dropped to a very low level. I am currently at 817 in my late 40s. If someone had told me that this would be my score back then, I would have never believed it. It felt hopeless, and I couldn't see a way out. Many people criticize consolidation services, but I truly believe they helped me. Story 37. I worked on myself, focusing on my personal growth. While I couldn't control what happened to me, I became responsible for my reactions and behaviors. I left an abusive partner, surrounded myself with supportive people, and changed my career to something I looked forward to each morning. I also experienced a fair amount of luck. Story 38. I took psilocybin and realized that I needed to make a change in my life. The next day, I started studying for the General Educational Development Test. I passed the test and enrolled in nursing school. If I can do it, anyone can. Story 39. I cut out everyone who was toxic or holding me back, including close family members. I moved to a new state, stopped drinking, and stopped trying to please anyone. I returned to college and finally completed my degree. I bought a house and secured a job before graduating. Here I am, focusing on what needs to be done and what is best for my family. I have only gone back to my hometown once in 5 years. Story 40. I stopped drinking and left my dead-end job. I spent more time with my significant other, family, and friends. Story 41. Reddit is making me chop up this comment, so it continues in the replies. Hustle and family help. That's basically it. Story time. My wife and I dropped out of college in our early 20s because we got pregnant and had a child. We had a decent enough life. I had a blue-collar job with the local gas company, and my wife was a homemaker. We were able to buy a house because I received some inheritance, and we had a few extras. but it was a dead-end situation. I couldn't afford to buy a new car if I ever needed one. The town we lived in outside of Houston wasn't great for schools, so I went back to school to get an education in information technology to improve my situation. But I was having a hard time getting my foot in the door. Either the jobs paid too little or I was a good fit, but someone else's child with no education or skills needed a career and got the job. I literally went to school with a teenager who was making $70,000 as a systems administrator for one of the plants, and he had to come to the school to learn how to do his job. So I decided to take a risk. I packed up and headed to a technology hub where the tech jobs would be more plentiful, making it easier for me to find work. I wanted to get out of Texas anyway, and it was a good opportunity to do that. So that's the setup. I get to Seattle and I'm in the same situation. I have some money from selling my house, thinking I can stay afloat for a few months while I look for work. A few months turned into 6 months, and I ran out of money. My grandfather helped keep me from homelessness quite a bit, and I took a job selling cars to make ends meet. It was a terrible job. I don't recommend it. I was barely able to keep afloat, but I kept having to take on more debt on credit cards and payday loans just to be able to eat and get to work. It was a terrible cycle. I convinced my grandfather to help me pay the bills while I looked for work. Selling cars was a 7-day-a-week, 12-plus-hour-a-day gig just to barely get by. I didn't have time or energy to apply for or interview for jobs, and I needed that time. He agreed but said it would only be for 4 months. After that, we were free to move back to Texas and live in his house with him. I spent 8 hours a day sitting at the kitchen table on my laptop applying for information technology jobs. Any I could find. I did a lot of interviews for jobs that didn't pay enough, but maybe they would get me somewhere. I remember getting turned down for a position in a warehouse imaging computers. I went to college to learn how to manage domain systems. How is it possible I can't get a job putting a USB stick in a computer and clicking on things? Story 42. The process began at 28 for me. It really comes down to self-awareness and accountability. As soon as you realize that your entire life situation is the result of things you did or didn't do, you can get to work. I'm 36 now, and over the last 8 years, I quit smoking marijuana, cigarettes, vaping, and drinking. I'm not overly strict with my diet, but I eat pretty healthily. I also quit pornography, meditate daily, and have developed a relationship with God and spirituality, which has resulted in much more love in my heart and significantly less fear and hate. I removed toxic people from my life, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. I've developed self-esteem and respect, which I lacked for most of my life. My best advice for anyone looking to change is, don't be a victim, even if you actually are. It's up to you and only you to figure out how to heal and change. Story 43. I felt lost in my teens and 20s, spending some time in jail and struggling with drugs, alcohol, and smoking. I was in debt and barely making ends meet. The job I had was with a person who preferred to party, which led to people frequently missing work after getting paid. Right before I turned 30, I had my first child, and I knew I had to do better. I left that job and stopped using drugs. I quit drinking long enough to also quit smoking. I set a goal to buy a house, so I worked hard to improve my credit and get out of debt, which took a few years. Life isn't perfect and never will be, but honestly, as a kid, I never thought I would make it to 40. Story 44. I treated my 30s like a fresh start. I moved to new cities, changed careers, and started over socially. It was terrifying, but it was also the best decision I ever made. Story 45. I left my home state and moved west for a well-paying job. I bought a house and leveraged my position for a higher-paying job. I completed graduate school and continued exercising. Story 46. I technically started the process in my late 20s, but I went back to school. I switched from full-time to part-time work, took out loans, and earned my registered nurse degree. It was the best decision I ever made. 8 years ago, I was living in hotels and my car. Set long-term goals, put in the work hours, and seek additional training or education if you need it to get ahead. Pays off. Story 47. I started taking care of myself. Morning walks and spending time alone help a lot. It's not always easy, but I think I'm okay now. Story 48. I relocated and started over in a different region of the country. I was fortunate to have friends who were also single and had room for me to stay with them while I got on my feet. One friend even helped me get a job that turned into a career path. I had setbacks later on, but if that friend hadn't come to town and helped me escape, I am not optimistic about what would have happened. Story 49. Meet someone who truly cares about you, start eating better, save some money, not a lot. You need to have some fun, and cut the negative social influences. If they don't make you happy, they don't deserve your time. Lastly, find a good hobby. Story 50. I got a challenging job at a large company headquarters in my state. I stayed and networked extensively to advance my career. I understand the current trend is to change jobs frequently for higher pay. But there are positions I've secured here that I wouldn't even be considered for externally. Connections and knowledge of a company are valuable. Working in a large organization, especially at headquarters, provides many more opportunities than at a smaller company. Story 51. I went back to school and now have a successful career. I met a wonderful woman who supports me. Honestly, she probably saved my life. Before I met her, I was heading in a self-destructive direction. Story 52. At 36, I had a difficult job and stuck with it no matter how hard it got or how much I wanted to quit. I own my house now. Story 53. I earned a degree and began paying off as much debt as possible for my job related to my degree. I secured a better paying job and am now saving for retirement. Story 54. How far did your education go? Could you have gone further? If so, consider returning to education. Mature students often find it easier to enter higher education than those who are 18 years old. If you are taking drugs, consider stopping. Marijuana can rob you of your ambition. Limit stronger substances to once or twice a year. Practice mindfulness every day, even if just for 10 minutes. Focus on your well-being. Find a hobby or sport that you enjoy and engage in it regularly. Story 55. Quit smoking marijuana. I got a divorce and moved closer to my family. I attended nursing school and mostly quit smoking marijuana regularly. Story 56. Not really unhappy, but I was basically stuck in an underpaid yet comfortable job for 6 years and only quit when the pandemic hit. I explored other jobs and finally decided to conquer my fears and go back to university. Now I earn better money and have found the love of my life. Overall, I am happier and my work and life in general are more stable. Story 57. I took too many risks in my 20s. I had a decent job after graduation but wanted to become an entrepreneur. My first business failed spectacularly, and I learned from it. My second business failed as well. Now, I have returned to the workforce and am slowly building a business on the side. But at least I have a reliable income instead of constantly stressing about paying my expenses. Never start a business without a backup plan. Story 58. I stopped partying, drinking, and smoking. I started drinking more water and eating better food. I began to take my diet and exercise more seriously, as well as my career. I saw a counselor and dealt with my issues. I listened to my parents. Surprisingly, they were actually right. I understand this isn't the case for everyone, and I empathize with that. I focused on getting better sleep. I started thinking more about where I want to be in my 50s and 60s and what I want to show for my life. This reflection motivated me to make small changes over time and stick to them. Our lives are short and we only get one chance. I want to feel good and remain sharp for as long as possible. Having a job you enjoy and surrounding yourself with supportive people does wonders for reaching your goals and feeling satisfied with your life. I wish you the best on your journey. Story 59. Slow and steady progress is made by working hard every day toward a single goal. It can be challenging at the beginning when you can't see any progress or feel like you're not moving forward. And some days it might even feel as though you're taking a step back. This applies to anything you are trying to improve, regardless of what it is. However, the cumulative effort over months to years eventually yields results, and looking back, it often seems to have gone by faster than it felt during the process. Story 60. I divorced my husband and spent a few years as a single parent with my kids. I remarried a fantastic man, and we have been happily married for 20 years. Life is so much better. Story 61. Quit going out and partying. It turns out that it costs a lot of money. I felt better because I experienced less self-inflicted damage. I started working out. I have extra money now. I want to go back to school for career development. I hope to meet a genuinely nice woman. She asks me out. Is this real? Story 62. Worked hard. Ignore those who say work your wage or don't volunteer for extra work. If your employer is decent, you will get promoted if you show initiative and competence. I have gone from beginner to senior management in 2 industries by trying to expand what we can do at work. Story 63. I left my ex after 13 years together. He always told me I couldn't accomplish things and that people didn't like me. I paid off my debt with the money I wasn't spending on him. I moved to a place he can't find. I focused on maintaining relationships that support me. I found a good therapist. I accomplished everything without him and stopped worrying about what other people think. Turns out he was wrong anyway. Story 64. I was in a difficult situation, and a friend rode his bike with me a few times to show me the cycling routes in our area. I began riding my bike as far as I could. I turned that into training for a marathon. I'm not completely out of my struggles, but my family has certainly stepped up now that they see me taking myself more seriously. Story 65. Quit drinking. Focus on health and fitness. Started reading again. Began saving money by identifying wants versus needs. Learned to cook. Story 66. I stopped drinking alcohol and, after struggling with lifelong depression and undergoing therapy while resisting medication, I eventually agreed to take antidepressants for 1 or 2 years. That combination was pivotal for me. Quitting drinking, therapy, and medication. Additionally, meeting my significant other, who has been incredibly supportive through everything, has been another major factor in my journey. Story 67. I was not doing well in my early 20s. I struggled with substance abuse, drinking, and maintaining a job. I didn't have a car and lived with my parents, spending all my time on dating apps. I was not going anywhere. Then I enrolled in community college. I took my classes seriously, earned good grades, and completed all my homework and assignments. In high school, I disliked it because I was forced to be there and never did more than what I needed to pass. Once I chose college, I actually tried for the first time in my life. That decision really began to change my life. I finally chose to do something instead of just surviving. I was making choices and had control over my life. I kept choosing to make positive changes. I quit smoking, got a girlfriend, stopped using drugs, and applied for a better job. Now I am 30 years old, and I have my life together. I bought my first home and I'm getting married. It took a lot of time and intentional effort, but I am creating the life I want for myself. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.